in any contributions that you might have to the discussion to us on our WhatsApp on 0809 4440981. Rotus is joining me this morning. Rotus, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our listeners out there. Good to be with you guys for a hump of the week Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right. Wednesday. Now let's get right into things. There's a lot of things to get into, but I think the best place to start is now there was this report in the Guardian and talked about President Buhari leaving inflation at its highest level in 17 years, and of course the presidency responded, attributing the high inflation numbers to COVID, and actually faulted that report. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, Garba Shehu is, I think it was the one who put out the response saying that, yeah, COVID is the reason why inflation is high, pointing to other countries, conveniently mentioning Turkey, conveniently mentioning Pakistan, and saying that Nigeria is not immune to the impact of COVID-19. But that's being disingenuous, and it's being basically trying to deceive people. Just for anyone who doesn't know, Nigeria's inflation rate, which was already in double digits before COVID, was accelerated by the border closure in August of 2019. They partially closed our borders, claiming that they wanted to stop smuggling. But because we depend on staple foods coming in from neighboring countries, your Ghanas, your Togos, and so on and so forth, that actually accelerated inflation. Inflation, I think, was like 11.4 year on year back in October, or is it August of 2019? Food inflation, I think, was about 13%. And so it was already in double digits.
Right.
And then from there, exactly, it just took off from there. So for him to claim that it's COVID-19, the legacy issues that have plagued Nigeria's inflation, or rather, plagued the country and accelerated inflation, they've always been there. The road networks, the lack of power to store food, and so on and so forth. I mean, as far back as 2012, when Goodluck Jonathan inaugurated a juice factory in Benue, I mean, it didn't go anywhere because there were issues. Dangote's tomato processing plants that he tried to inaugurate, that also had its own issues. So there have been legacy infrastructure issues that have impacted Nigeria for years before COVID. So to come out and try and deceive people is just wrong.
So this is more or less just trying to let us grasping at straws here and finding a response to what was said in that report, not trying to let it save face, if I can put it that way.
Right. Exactly. That's what it is. It's
interesting, and let's see what comes out after. It will be interesting to see if there's going to be a back and forth on this matter. All right, now let's take a look at another issue here. Now there was a report by SBM Intelligence on the impact of the Naira redesign people has had, and it was a very interesting one. But let me let you get in on this. So what exactly is the report telling us?
Yes, so the report is basically stating that the cash scarcity as a result of the Naira redesign adversely impacted businesses, adversely impacted individuals. I think this is one of the first in-depth reports to come out and take a look at the impact of the Naira design and the impact of the cash scarcity. I stand corrected if there's another one, but this has been like one of the most in-depth ones that we've seen so far. So it's basically essentially looking at how the cash scarcity impacted the economy, breaking it down to individuals and SMEs.
Now, according to that report, when I actually went through it, about 36.9% of businesses in Nigeria had to lay off their staff or reduce their working hours in order to, weather the cash shortage that was caused by that Naira redesign policy. Now, can you talk about the theoretical anatomy of policy decisions and how the life cycle is actually supposed to play out?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, theoretically speaking, when you want to implement a policy, you have a vision, right? I want to do this. So this is my vision. And then you've got the intentions that are behind that vision, right? But most importantly, there are the reality parameters. I don't know. Yeah. So there's the reality of what it is you're trying to do, right? So you could be inaugurating a juice factory in a particular state, and you have a vision to, produce natural juice from fruits and get, natural fruit concentrates. But the reality parameters is that power is an issue. So unless you build your own power plant or you have your own independent source of power, that is a parameter based on reality that is going to impact your vision. So you've got a vision, you've got intentions, then there are the reality parameters, and then you've got to talk to stakeholders and say, okay, this is what I want to do, this is my vision, these are my intentions, okay, and so this is my reality, and can we speak and discuss how this is going to work? And then you execute. So that's how it's supposed to work in theory, but in reality in Nigeria, it's another way.
I just wonder, because sometimes when some of these policies are implemented, you just sit down and think that was this whole thing thought out from beginning to end, where all the possibilities you looked at? Because as an individual, as a layman, quote unquote, you can see these things. You begin to wonder, do they actually see the things that we have seen as well? But anyways, what exactly were the policy objectives of that Naira Redesign policy? Were they realistic and were they even achieved?
So this is where thank you. So this is where you talk about your vision and you talk about your intentions. So I mean, they said they wanted to check counterfeiting, reduce cash management expenditure, promote financial inclusion, enhance visibility of money supply. Did they achieve those things? No, I mean, they didn't, right? Because it just simply was not enough of a supply of the notes. And the reality parameters were that there were logistical challenges in getting those notes across different parts, to enough of the population across the country. So yeah, they had, as the saying goes, the road, what's that saying? The road to hell is paved by good intentions, right? I think that's the saying. So, they had good intentions, but the issue was, did you talk to stakeholders? Did you, look at this policy and say, is this thing going to work? And what are the challenges? So that's, the thing was rushed and it wasn't properly executed, even though it had good intentions behind it. And we all ended up suffering for it.
Now, talking about consulting with stakeholders, and of course, should I say, picking the minds of those in the know. Now, this policy was taken to the president, and of course, he has sent it to it, and we move forward. Now, can you speak on the importance of having good advisors around one? Now, just answer this with an example.
Yeah. So I was watching an interview Tony Elumelu gave on television. He was asked about his relationship with Femi Otedola, right? Okay. And then he said, we're good friends, and in fact, I only follow two people on Instagram: my wife, Mrs. Elumelu, and Femi Otedola. And then the interviewer said, you should follow our news channel as well on Instagram, right? It was like just trying to be funny. But in the moment he said it, Elumelu just instinctively said, my team will advise, right? I mean, it just came out. So, I mean, a decision as small as who to follow on Instagram, he has a team in place of advisors, right? And it was like, they will advise, even if it was said in jest, it was just an automatic response from him. So you link that to any policy decision: Naira redesign, border closure, fuel subsidies, the 2023 fiscal policy measures where they are jacking up excise duties on tobacco and alcoholic beverages, the presidency made a big show of is it PEAC? Presidential Economic Advisory Council, PEAC. Big show. They had all the biggest, Bismarck Rewane, Joe Salami, all these big economists that were part of his advisory team. And yet, despite the advisory team, it doesn't look like they had any inputs into any of the decisions, if you can think of, in recent memory, that were made. So the importance of advisors, if a Tony Elumelu, a billionaire who, well, he's in the private sector, they listen to the advisors and their strategy teams. If he can instinctively say, my advisors will tell me what to do, or let me know if it's a good idea to follow your news channel on Instagram, don't you think logically say that it's important for the presidency to listen to advisors on a Naira redesign, a border closure, fuel subsidies, fiscal policy measures, banning Twitter? Think of the impact that it had to close off Twitter for people who sell goods and services online. I mean, all these decisions, when you think about them, where were the advisors? So that's what you have.
Interesting. Now, during the peak of the cash, POS agents, they faced a lot of backlash for raising their prices to access cash. But was it actually fair? Now, if supply of cash falls and demand rises, isn't it just economics 101 that the cost of accessing cash will increase?
Yeah, to some extent, you're right. I agree with that. But some of the way they jacked up those prices to access cash was it was pretty astronomical. But yeah, so I mean, I'm half and half on it. On the one hand, I agree with you that cash was scarce. They have to access cash. They probably have to go through costs of accessing it, and so they increased their prices to access. But on the other hand, did those rates to access cash have to be that astronomical? Again, these are the type of things you're supposed to think about and talk about when you are theoretically going through your decision to implement policy.
All right. Now, looking at food, let's not quickly talk about food here. Now, food inflation in Nigeria has risen to 24.61%. Now, what was the impact of the cash design policy on farmers?
It was really bad. I mean, the farmers basically, there was no cash to buy produce from the farmers. So some of them had to sell them off at lower than their cost price of being able to produce them. And we saw in February, I think, month-on-month inflation actually decelerated because demand, basically for goods and food stuff, fell. So that was the impact. Farmers were impacted negatively because there just wasn't cash. I mean, it wasn't just farmers. I mean, one of the biggest telecommunications company in Nigeria, in its Q1 reports, talked about how cash scarcity impacted people's ability to buy recharge cards, at least people who buy them physically. Bank apps were failing, so you couldn't even recharge your phone using your bank app because of the pressure on the online service. So yeah, it was widespread.
All right, now really, really quickly, in about 30 seconds. Now, the Supreme Court has said that the old notes remain in circulation until the end of the year. SBM comply. What do we hope for by the end of 2023?
Very quickly, we hope that we see the new notes, and that's it. We just hope that we see, because it's all old notes now. We don't see any new notes, hardly see any new notes. So we hope we see the new notes by the end of the year.
Vicky on WhatsApp says, having a great team of advisors is good, but what if the principal is not taking their advice?
So brilliant. Thank you for that message. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rotus, for joining us on Business Express. Have yourself a great day ahead.
All right. You too. Thanks, everybody. See you tomorrow.
All righty. And with that, we come to the end of Business Express on Smooth 98.1. Still so much more to look forward to. Great music. And of course, at 7:30, it'll be time for Freshly Pressed. Keep listening to Smooth 98.1.
Brought to you by Intersource Transaction Solutions. You can depend on that.